Assalamu alaikum, students. Today we'll continue with the topic of corporate entrepreneurship. If you can recall, in our last lecture we described corporate entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs as individuals who actually work for some particular organization. These are the individuals who are creative, who are innovative, but instead of becoming entrepreneurs, they tend to give their ideas to their employers, to their employing organizations, with hope that those organizations would adopt those ideas and enhance their product offerings and subsequently increase individual as well as the performance of the organization. There were few models that we discussed through which organizations tend to introduce corporate entrepreneurship. First one was administrative model, and it was more related to the cross-functional teams, whereby you have representatives of various functional departments sitting together and deciding what to do, right? So that keeps your R&D and all other departments in line and on one focus. The other model was opportunistic model, right? Whereby if the employees hit some jackpot, some possible jackpot, the organization stands beside them and let them explore that. And we took example of the Newsweek guys who diversified the original business of Newsweek that was in the publishing industry. They would collect the news and publish it, and now they have diversified into provision of quality printing presses that do pressing on a massive level. Then we had imitative entrepreneurship model, whereby you tend to copy the things that have been done around, or there are two choices that you have got. Either you do them in a much better way, as was the case with Japan, or you come up with the inferior models of the same product, as we tend to witness in the case of China. Then we also discussed about the acquisitive model, whereby the organizations tend to go for acquisitions or mergers for those particular skills and capabilities that they are not possessing at the moment. We took an example of the possible pharmaceutical firm that may collaborate with a research-oriented firm, let's say for a particular disease, and they could take their findings and utilize them in commercial way. Last model was the incubative model, that is related to the incubation process, whereby you tend to come up with a team that collects idea, they evaluate them and pick the most relevant ideas, and they then start working on that. They will develop the prototypes, get the feedback from the customers, and until that product is rolled out in the market, this team is responsible for the whole process. Yes, corporate entrepreneurship is great, entrepreneurship is great. This is something that organizations need to do. Just take example of our telecom sector, Zong, Telenor, Mobilink, and Ufone. All of them are in business of providing you call service, SMS service, and internet service. If anyone is providing the same services, there is nothing unique to that. But it was Telenor's initiative of Easy Paisa. That was altogether a different service based upon their existing network, right? Whereby they altogether changed and introduced a new business model, which forced their competitors to follow their suit. Corporate entrepreneurship at work. It's a luck, I would say, if the organizations get hold of such individuals. But retaining them is a huge challenge. Then we explored various options that are available to keep those individuals with your organization. The first one was your traditional model, whereby you tend to give that person promotion, some financial, non-financial benefits, some acknowledgement, with hope that he sticks with the organizations. But depending upon the quality of idea and the commercial potential of it in dollar terms or rupee terms, some people may not be satisfied with that kind of some compensation. So then we talked about SPUs, whereby the business within its own entity designates a separate business unit for taking care of that particular product that those entrepreneurs or corporate entrepreneurs came up with. So they would be the managers of that SBU, taking care of all of the aspects related to the business aspect of that particular product. But some people are still not satisfied because they say, here, we have got the status, we have got the authority, but we do not have ownership. We want to make profit as well. In that case, organizations tend to go for corporate spin-offs, whereby altogether new business is registered, and usually your mother organization would tend to keep the majority shares and would let the entrepreneurs or corporate entrepreneurs take care of that business. And I told you, in case of if we apply the Porter 5 forces, either the mother organization would be the major supplier or major customer of that corporate spin-off, and they can keep a good eye and control over the operations indirectly. Now let's have a quick look on the advantages of intrapreneuring over entrepreneuring. For entrepreneurs, getting adequate amount of capital is a huge challenge. We have explored all the options. Not necessarily everybody has got access to the sums that would be required to run business. In case of corporate entrepreneurship, corporations are usually resourceful, right? So if the idea is clickable, there is a possibility of provision of the required capital. The organization can dedicate a certain amount of capital that is required, and the entrepreneurs would not have to go outside looking for the capital that is required for that business. Access to customers. Usually entrepreneurs would come up with ideas related to the products in which organizations are already dealing, right? So in that case, they do not need to develop altogether new markets. They can have available customers to start the business with. And with passage of time, they can expand it according to the potential and according to the strategy that they adopt. Infrastructure. Again, they may not necessarily have to get new office premises or set up new factories, production units. So probably there is a possibility that existing infrastructure of the organization could be utilized to roll out the new venture. Management pools. Now that is again a huge advantage that corporate entrepreneurs can enjoy. Could you recall the presentation that we did, Dick Bardo? Remember that case study in which that chap was trying to present some patentable idea, right? And to the not to the wrong audience. He was actually not presenting the right content to the potential financiers. In case of organization, if Dick Bardo was working for some multinational, he would first have advantage of capital sources, and he would also have access to people with different expertise. Organization could allocate a marketing manager with him to help him out that how to sell his product, right? Organization could dedicate a finance guy with Dick Bardo to advise him how to manage his finances, right? This is something that entrepreneurs may not necessarily have this provision. Then leverage on an existing business. So once you roll out an entrepreneurial venture, you are basically relying upon an already existing business, which has established itself, which is successful, presumably. So adding another business on basis of an existing business is easier rather than starting it right from the scratch, an altogether new market. While there could be advantages that are enjoyed by corporate entrepreneurs as compared to the normal entrepreneurs, there are some disadvantages as well. Continuity of sponsorship. The management may get very excited with the idea, and they may initially roll out all the support that you require. But let's say if there is a downturn in economy and the firm falls short of cash, the managers may get into different priorities, and may not necessarily continue the sponsorship to the extent that is actually required for success of that particular venture. So you are not the only person calling the shots. You would be basically dependent upon the top management. So if they've got change of mind, that is going to directly affect you and the corporate venture that you are undertaking. Profit and loss focus. Corporations have to make profit and loss statement every year, and they tend to disclose it to their shareholders. It's not necessary that if you roll out a new corporate venture or entrepreneurial venture that it will be bearing fruits and profit from day one. It may require a period of, let's say, 2 to 3 years. But the shareholders will keep asking the management, yaar, isse nikal to raha nahi kuch, why did you do this? So this profit and loss focus could again change mind of the management. They may cut the project to size that may not necessarily later on bear the required fruit as was originally anticipated. Short-term mentality is there, corporate meddling, bureaucracy, decisions by committees. Entrepreneurs are individuals who thrive on independence. Autonomy is something that they love. In case of corporate entrepreneurship, they will have to go back to various officers, various offices, various committees. And those people may not necessarily be corporate entrepreneurs. So they can offer challenges or red tape kind of thing, whereby they will keep evaluating your new venture on the basis of very traditional methods, and it is not, it may not be surprising that even if they consider your project as non-feasible. So imagine kare if you have to deal with such individuals every now and then, so rather than focusing on the development and promotion of that project, आपकी आधी एनर्जी इन लोगों को satisfy करने में लग जाए तो आपने क्या काम करना? So that is yet another challenge that entrepreneurs tend to face. Lack of passion on behalf of management, and after few meetings with the bureaucratic committees, even the motivation of corporate entrepreneurs may fizz out, unless they are tenacity-oriented chaps. And usually, corporates would like to have businesses with huge potential. Unless the business qualifies to be that, it is quite possible that the top management may lose interest in it. Aversion to risk. Yes, entrepreneurs are very risk-oriented, rather moderate risk-oriented. Entrepreneurs are somehow even lesser risk-oriented.
Maybe their employment is on stake.
Their employment could be on stake, right? The top management may be altogether risk-averse. So the kind of initiative, the kind of momentum that is required may not necessarily be possible in strict bureaucratic organizational setups. Yeah. Entrepreneurship and corporate entrepreneurship are somehow used interchangeably. But I had actually explained the difference between you. Entrepreneurs would be those individuals who take their initiative on their own. Self-motivated. On the other hand, corporate entrepreneurship is basically an initiative whereby the organization first tend to come up with an environment, a culture that is conducive to promotion of corporate entrepreneurs. Thanks for asking this question. It's quite proven in the literature that entrepreneurs tend to be less risk takers as compared to the normal entrepreneurs. It's for that reason they keep sticking to their jobs.
And so can you explain the second point?
Have to be big to be material. Small ventures may not necessarily qualify to get attention of the top management, although they may be very fruitful on a small scale. Sorry?
Short-term mentality.
Here देखें, if an entrepreneur starts a venture, he can assume that it may take me a year or 2 years or 3 years to get to a point where I'll start actually minting money. Organizations, they have to declare their profit and loss statement every year. So for them, they keep a very good check, a strict check over the activities that are not bearing profit. So their view is that 365 days period. So they may not necessarily have that kind of vision, or they may not necessarily share that vision with you for that small venture. So how the organizations can support the process of corporate entrepreneurship? Firstly, they can come up with setups, they can come up with institutions who facilitate funding. Rather than the entrepreneurs going to everybody, they can have forums whereby if the idea is presented and if it is considered as feasible, the funding could be easily made available to the entrepreneurs. Offer a stable paycheck as an idea germinates. Incentivize the whole process. Find creative ways to reward employees and let them get rich from their creations. Do not do entrepreneurship or corporate entrepreneurship on the expense of people who are being creative. If rest of the organization does not see those people thriving, other people would not be motivated to come up with ideas. Can have longer time horizons than venture capitalists have. Again, venture capitalists, we had discussed in the financing option, they are outsiders, and their interest lies in getting their money back as soon as possible, right? Corporations, on the other hand, can wait. They know that this is their ownership of the whole venture, the employees are working with them, and they can have a longer time horizon as compared to an outsider venture capitalist. Allow people to speak their minds and proceed with their plans if they have sufficient evidence and arguments. मैं ना मानो वाली strategy नहीं होनी चाहिए. If the person is convincing enough, the management needs not to become puppy kutten puppy. Right? हर बात के अंदर कीड़े निकालने की जरूरत नहीं. Allow employees to take risk without fear of reprisals. If I knew here if I'm going to assume some risk for the organization, and the organization would fire me there and then if it doesn't turn out to be fruitful, probably I won't take much of risk. And so would be the case with most of the employees. जिससे हम लोगों ने बात की थी ना कि not every creative idea is going to turn out to be a great business. So you need to have tolerant attitude towards the individuals who are coming forward with these initiatives. Have a formal process for moving an idea from research to product to market. That was the incubative team concept. Understand the right balance between structure and spontaneity. Spontaneous, right? At times you need to take action there and then, rather than waiting and postponing those decisions for months and years, which can actually fizz out the whole opportunity that is available there. So the organization structure is there. Yes, the file needs to move from one office to another. Maybe it may have to go to 10 or 12 offices before it gets the final approval, but the organization should be lean enough, smart enough to accommodate those proposals that require immediate consideration. Organizations can have entrepreneurial team and task forces. Now this is very important. When you are hiring individuals, try to find those individuals who have got potential to become corporate entrepreneurs. For instance, if I was to hire some bioscientists from your batch, and I want my organization to be entrepreneurial organization, the one that is encouraging corporate entrepreneurship. So apart from your GPAs and your expertise in biosciences, I would also like to gauge that how much cross-functional knowledge do you have? How much creative you are? How much transformational leadership skill you tend to demonstrate? How good you are at networking? How good you are at influencing? How good you are, or how open rather you are to new experiences? How conscientious you are? How dedicated you are to the tasks that are allotted to you? And then I would also like to see that the culture and the provision of reward is there, so that the people who are hired know that if they perform in this particular manner, they also know that they will get rewarded for such behavior. Application of strategic plans that focus on achieving innovation, that would be development of your vision statement and mission statement that clearly states that the emphasis that your organization is ready to put on innovation. It's establishment of internal research and development programs that are likely to see the tangible results. Not all organizations can afford these kind of programs, but again, you can go for collaborations in this case. That concludes the corporate entrepreneurship topic. Now we'll move on to our next topic that is related to the stakeholders management. How many of you love eating steaks? Beef steak? Chicken steak? Only two? Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many of you like eating steak? Kind of okay? If available, you'll eat it? Okay. Today, we are going to talk about stakeholders. A perfect stakeholder, ji? Somebody carrying 2 steaks at one point of time? But these are not the stakeholders that we are going to talk about today. Oops. Yeah. We are going to talk about stakeholders in context of organizations. Those individuals, those groups, or those organizations that may influence the working of our organization, or who may get influenced by the working of our organization, would be our stakeholders. कौन है जी stakeholders? Individuals, groups, and organization who may affect us or who may get affected by the operation of organization. These would be individuals group with multitude of interests, expectation and demands as to what business should provide to the society. Let's try understanding this concept. आज से कोई 3-4 सदियां पहले, when we did not have these large corporation, जो typical business था, their main stakeholders would be the suppliers, customers, and their employees. Because apart from these 3 entities or 3 stakeholders, if any one of them goes missing, the business would be collapsing. But with introduction of corporations, the model has somehow become more complicated. Now, in case of corporation, shareholders are a different entity. They are the major stakeholders. On behalf of shareholders, management tends to operate the organizations. and utilize the employees of the organization to get to the objectives set out by the management. Organizations now have to deal with various government levels as well. They may have to deal with federal government, provincial government, local government. They also have to deal with banks, financial institutions. They may also have to deal with media. They may also have to deal with regulators.
Sir, media stakeholders should be, etc.
Media is one of the stakeholders. It is one of the stakeholders. Depending upon what business you are in, you can have private citizens as stakeholders, institutional groups, board members, then your environmental groups, government, minorities, women. So this picture has become much more complicated as it was 2 or 3 centuries back. If we were to identify stakeholders of CompStats University, who would they be?
Students,
Good.
parents,
Parents, teachers, employees, Higher Education Commission,
government as well.
government as well, बिल्कुल ठीक है, और
Print media.
print media, media in general,
So research firms don't like.
competitors, right? Our partners, for instance, Lancaster University and other institutions, right? Sorry? Virtual is one of our campuses, right? The first thing that you have to do in order to go for stakeholder management is to identify all the relevant stakeholders. You list them down, and once you have listed them, the second step that needs to be done is classification of the types of the stakes that they possess in our organization. There are primarily 4 kinds of stakes that the stakeholders may hold in the organization. The first one is economic stakeholders. Those stakeholders who are related to the organizations due to financial consideration in one way or the other would be the economic stakeholders of the organization. This may include customers, suppliers, possibly banks, right? Employees. ये जो मैट्रिक्स है, let's say owners are economic stakeholder, tick mark कर दिया. Customers are economic stakeholder, identify कर दिया. The second kind of stake is the legal stake. These are the stakeholders that are related to your business because of the legal arrangement of that country or that area. And usually you'll have to deal with governments and regulators under legal stakes. In case of CompStats, who regulates us? HEC. So HEC would be listed here and will mark legal stakeholder. But HEC has got a complicated relation with universities. It's not just legal relation.
Technical as well.
No, it's economic as well, because we tend to get funding from them. So in front of HEC, we'll have 2 ticks, economic and legal. So the more stakes an organizations have in our organization, the more influential they can be. अगर हम उनकी इकोनॉमिकली बात नहीं मानते, वो हमारे लीगल वे से they can tighten our screw. Third type is the ethical stakeholders. Now these would be the stakeholders that are related to you with expectation to the kind of operation that you are running. An organization needs to be fair. An organization needs to be providing products that are safe. An organization needs to ensure that all of its waste water and air is treated well before it is exhausted out, right? If it does not do that, it would be affecting the community around it, right? So all those individuals will be the ethical stakeholders. Legal stakeholders, pe ji, let me give you an example how they can work. I can still recall I was in university, in International Islamic University, Islamabad, and one of my friends was coming to see me from Lahore. In those days, jazz was a newbie in the market. और उन्होंने जो पंच लाइन रखी हुई थी ना जैज को प्रमोट करने के लिए, it was can you handle it? They were offering bundle of services. हुआ क्या? कौन रेगुलेट करता है जी टेलीकॉम को?
PTA.
PTA. When PTA issues license to any telecom holder, let's say any telecom holder would have 100% capacity, they're required to keep around to 10 to 15% capacity vacant, ताकि अगर overload हो, overuse हो तो मामला stuck ना हो जाए. But in the initial phase, the demand was so much that the organization were ignoring this requirement. और हालत ये पहुंच चुकी थी कि if you had to make a call, you may have to like try 10 or 20 times before you will get connected. So this chap comes to me, spends weekend with me, and I saw him off back to Lahore at Karachi company. और जब मैं वापस हॉस्टल पहुंचा, I got this message saying, I'm on my way to hostel, to your hostel. तभी तो इतनी मुश्किल से जान छुड़वा के आया, ये दोबारा कहाँ से आ गया? Turns out that that SMS was sent 2 days ago, जो कि system stuck होने की वजह से अब मिला. And you know what happened? As of result of this pathetic quality service, PTA came into action. उन्होंने दो काम किए. Overall, they fined Mobilink for this pathetic service. Another bit that they did was that they asked them to give free credit of 50 rupees to all Jazz users because of the poor service that they had to endure. So legal stakeholders can have a very strong influence if they tend to flex their muscle. Ethical stakeholders, see, for instance, talk about Masood Textile Mills. That was at one point of time, जितना भी उनका डाइंग का पानी था, जितना वेस्ट पानी था डाइंग प्रोसेस का, that would include lots of chemicals, and they were just chucking it out. So the communities that were living there, they were getting directly affected by those polluted ingredients in that water. If you could recall, there was a documentary on Geo News a few years back that was stating that जो कि रावल लेक नहीं, रावी के साथ जितने भी गांव due to polluted water वहाँ पे disabilities आ चुकी हैं बच्चों. Now those individuals are the ethical stakeholders of all those organizations who are throwing their polluted water in the river. Fourth type G, philanthropic stakeholders. These are the stakeholders that are related to your organization because of your philanthropic outlook or outreach. For instance, when Ariel says, "Ji, this Ramadan buy Ariel and will donate 1 rupee against each bag sold to kids that are affected by thalassemia. तो otherwise वो बच्चे dependent नहीं है Ariel पे, but once that arrangement is made, now they expect Ariel to behave in a certain manner, to contribute a certain amount towards their cause. So they are the philanthropic stakeholders of Ariel. In case of ComSats, back in 2010 when we had this massive flood, ComSat started catering a particular village. Every year we would go there with all the ration and other provisions. And now those people were expecting ComSats to help them every single year. They were the philanthropic stakeholders. ComSats has got another initiative whereby it adopted 100 kids who were left orphan after the earthquake back in 2005. And it is taking care of their schooling and their lodging as well. And it is going to take their care until they graduate from ComSats. So those kids are the philanthropic stakeholders of ComSats. So we have done two things till now. First, we have listed all the relevant stakeholders, and secondly, we have tried to classify the types of the stakes that are being held. But we still lack that big picture that could show us the various stakeholders mapped against each other. For that, we have got a very interesting diagram, and it's called power interest grid. It's a 2x2 matrix. On the horizontal side, you have got the power that your stakeholder possesses. So if your stakeholder has got high power, it would come in this quadrant. If your stakeholder cannot influence you much, it would be somewhere here. On the vertical side, interest in the organization. If the magnitude of interest is low, they would be mapped here. If the magnitude of interest is high, the stakeholders would be mapped in the upper quadrant. Sorry? Sara repeat करूँ या last वाला? Okay. On the horizontal end, we have got the power that may be exercised by the stakeholder against us. If they are highly powerful, they would be mapped somewhere here. If they are not that powerful or not that influential on us, they would be mapped somewhere here. On the vertical side, we have got interest. The interest that the stakeholders carry in our organization. If the stakeholders have got high interest in our organization, they would be mapped somewhere here. And if the interest of that stakeholder is low, they would somehow get mapped out here. Clear जी? समझ आ गई? Right जी? High power, high interest, they would be mapped here and they would be clubbed as players. Your main customers, your suppliers, your bank, these are the stakeholders who you tend to deal with every day, who are very seriously interested in the operation of your organization and who may adversely affect your organization as well. Right, Ji? Now there is an interesting thing. Customers, for example, could be mapped here in the players. Lekin, I would like you guys to relate this to your Porter 5 forces. If, let's say, 50,000 aunts in Pakistan, auntiyan, buy Ariel every day, और उनमें से 3 कहती हैं कि मुझे Ariel पसंद नहीं आया, And if they say कि we are not going to buy it next day or next month, उस एरियल की सेहत पे कितना असर पड़ जाएगा?
Not much.
Not much. Now compare that with an organization who has got total 3 customers. और उनमें से अगर एक कस्टमर ये कहता है कि जी we may not be interested in buying your product, the power that they will possess is much higher as compared to the aunties who have ditched aerial. So even the customers, depending upon which organization you are mapping for, aerial may have aunties somewhere mapped here, but the other organization with altogether 3 customers may have customer mapped here because they've got much higher power. They yield much higher power or much more influence over the organization. Subjects. कौन लोग आएंगे जी यहाँ पे? Those stakeholders who have got high interest and low power. NGOs could be a good example of subjects. The entities who have got low power but high interest in the organization. Let's take example of carpet weaving. The ones that are hand woven. That industry is known for using child labor. And why do they do that? जिस तरह का वो वहाँ पे गिरे लगानी होती है वो छोटे हाथों से ज़्यादा अच्छी लगती है. It's for that reason kids are used there. So all of the NGOs who are focusing on the welfare of kids keep a very good eye on all the setups that are using the children. वो तो आपने classify कर लिया ना बेटा आपने. वो तो classify कर लिया आपने. Now we are actually trying to spot that stakeholder in this diagram. The interest of those NGOs is very high, but they cannot force us to shut down. वो हमारे और सेटअप के बाहर मुजाहरे तो कर सकते हैं कि चाइल्ड लेबर यूज ना करो, but they cannot ask us कि जी आप ताला लगा के बंद कर दें. No, they cannot do that.
So, but if it's not legal, they can.
उसमें भी गुंजाइशें पैदा होती हैं. Let me explain you how. Same business, a friend of mine was doing it. He was from Afghanistan. You know what he did? He started offering those kids free schooling in the same facility. So these kids would come first for schooling for 2 to 3 hours, then they would be offered lunch, and after that they would start weaving the carpets. Because his claim was that if he does not engage them, they will become third-class laborer with no skill altogether. वो सड़कों पे कहीं घूम फिर रहे होंगे. Right? Then you have got context setters who have got somehow lower interest in your organization but may yield high power or high influence over your organization. Your regulators. PTA does not come to Mobilink every single day कि जी बताएं कितनी सिमें इशू की आपने, and what is the status of your revenues, and what is the quality of service that you are providing, give us a daily brief on that. No, they do not do that. But they tend to ask for the certain amount of documentation as is warranted by the license that was issued to those organizations. If PTA finds some breach in that setup, they can give penalties to those players.
The food authority of
फूड अथॉरिटी है. आजकल पैमरा चैनल बंद कर देते हैं 2 हफ्ते के लिए, 1 महीने के लिए. दे टेंड टू शट डाउन पर्टिकुलर शोज. वो क्या है? दैट इज द पावर दैट दे यील्ड. लेकिन दे डू नॉट गो आफ्टर एवरी सिंगल शो. You need to do some hanky-panky in order to get their attention. Right? Once you go for these hanky-panky shows, then you'll have their interest focus on you. And as a result, they may yield their power. that is bestowed in them through law. Fourth G. Sorry? वो बदमाशी है बेटा, वो बदमाशी है. It sounds fascinating. Yeah, they may have done few good things. Yeah, but don't you think वो clear breach of privacy? Clear breach है. I mean, you are working in your lab and he comes here कि जी आप बताएं जी आपने ये सोडियम क्लोराइड पानी में क्यों मिलाया? Let me conclude, please. Crowd. Those entities who have got low influence and low power. Usually, the community comes in this quadrant, but there has to be some caution that needs to be taken. Take example of our religious context. मैंने पहले भी शायद जिक्र किया था. कामोकी के अंदर there was a rice mills. वहाँ पे मजदूरों की they had conflict with the manager. So before that conflict, the crowd or the community around was least bothered about the operations that were being run within that mills. What those laborers did was कि they went outside and started propagating कि जो manager है उसने कुरान मजीद की बेहुरमती की. Went to mosques और ऐलानात किए and a mob gathered there. And that manager was killed on the spot. Now, the same community that you would consider as feeble, with low interest and low power, and that particular moment moved to this point. Highest power and highest amount of influence, interest. Now, next slide, and this would conclude our lecture as well. Once you have identified and clubbed various stakeholders in the relevant quadrant, how do we deal with them? Players, we need to manage them very closely. We need to keep a good eye on their moves. For subjects, we need to keep them satisfied, the NGOs kind of stakeholders. Context setters, we need to make sure that all of their documentational requirements are met well. उसमें breach ना करें ताकि वो आपकी तरफ focus ना आए उनका. And for crowd, keep monitoring them with minimum effort, but मैंने अभी आपको जो example दी है, they can go savage. It's for that reason you may be able to relate that businessmen tend to participate in local religious ceremonies.
Yes.
They are good donors there. That gives them
Because they don't want to get killed.
exactly. Do not go for that extreme comment. Rather, they want to find themselves engaged with the local community. Now let us try to understand that how organizations tend to use this technique smartly. How many of us love coffee? Raise your hands, please. Okay. Which brand do you like? Nescafe? All Nescafe guys? Okay. Nescafe, although we consider Nescafe as a good and very popular brand throughout the world, they are usually criticized by NGOs for the reason that they tend to buy coffee beans at a very cheaper rate from the communities that are far flung and who lack the very basic necessities, including schooling, the very basic health facilities and all. So these NGOs tend to criticize these large corporations that, for example, they are buying coffee for 50 pence a kg and they tend to sell it for 20 pounds a kg, and they make lots and lots of profit in between. There is a particular NGO and it's called Fair Trade Organization. What this organization does is it has established few standards. If you comply to that standards, or rather those standards, they issue you or allow you to use their fair trade mark on your labeling, which would mean that the customer, when they see that label, know that you are contributing back to the communities from which you are getting your raw material. Usually, you'll find fair trade as a very great critique of Nescafe and Nestle and other products. What one entrepreneur did was, he came up with a brand of coffee called Percol. And rather than getting criticized by fair trade or other NGOs, what they did was they approached fair trade. Tell us, how can we help those communities? And according to the standards that were set out by fair trade, they tried to comply to them to the possible extent. And finally, they qualified for that logo. Now, while you go for shopping coffee, the jar of Nescafe that you get for, let's say, £5, the same quality coffee with the same quantity, you tend to buy for £7.50 for a Percol pack. Because people are aware and they realize that this company is putting some finances back into those communities who are serving them. लेकिन जो बेस्ट पार्ट है वो ये कि whenever fair trade would make any presentation on the coffee market, first they argue कि यार नेस्ले वालों ने तो बड़ा गरक किया हुआ है, ज्यादती करते हैं. लेकिन देखें परकोल भी तो है, पब्लिसिटी. वे नेस्ले की दुनिया में परकोल जैसे भी होते हैं जो कि कम्युनिटीज का ख्याल भी रखते हैं, राइट? और कस्टमर्स उनको ज्यादा प्रीमियम प्राइस पे पे करने के लिए तैयार है. Same stakeholders that the industry would be considering as adversary, they are their major allies. Stakeholder management at its best. Thank you.